All right. I apologize for a little bit earlier. We didn't have any voice, but I think it's back now. Just let me know in the comments if you can hear audio. Does it sound clear? Do I sound beautiful? Does it sound like I can sing in the next America's Top Idol? Probably not. But either way, today we are starting off with a few things. We're going to talk about the news and we're going to do an unboxing. Let's just get the unboxing out of the way. This here is the MSI GE75 Raider, okay? This is one of the laptops that was announced at Computex this year. This is using the brand new i9-9750H, an RTX 2060, has 16 gigabytes of RAM, 17-inch display, and most importantly, it has 144 refresh rate. All right, so let's open up. Let's take a look at this guy. So like I said, this is one of their laptops announced at Computex. Tons of laptops came, oh, I just clearly opened this the wrong way. Tons of laptops came out in the last week. A lot of exciting ones, a lot that I hope to get into the studio, but this is one of the first ones. So let's just quickly jump in. We have some paperwork, okay. We have, what's this here? Part of the power supply. And then this is the power brick. Typical power brick, this is about 230 watts. Now the laptop itself is a mixture of metal and plastic. So the bottom you have plastic, which is fine. It has like these funky little striations running across the bottom of itself. You have tons of air vents to allow heat to be removed from the laptop. And then on the top, you have your typical MSI GS75 design. I need a moment of silence so I can take off this plastic, okay? If I can find the little, here you go, right here. Little button right here. Take this off. Come on, you can do it. All right, that's not coming off. Let me open it up from here. Why is this so hard to do? There we go. All right. Ah, beautiful. So you have the red striations going down the middle. The MSI logo is there as well. It feels pretty premium. It's like a combination of a more upscale laptop and one of the more mid-range products. This is not as expensive as the GS75 or the GS65 Stealth, so it sits somewhere in the middle. Now, this is probably about, I'd say, 5.5 pounds, so it's not too heavy, but it's thicker than the GS75, which means you'll have better cooling when this thing is performing. Now, in typical fashion, you have the SteelSeries keyboard. This lights up, it's RGB. We've seen this on their previous design, so this is absolutely nothing new. I like this keyboard, like the travel distance is nice and plush. It has good actuation, but I'm kind of getting sick of the font. I think they need to update this font to make it look a little bit cleaner. Again, this is just like a subjective opinion. You guys might feel differently, but I thought you guys know anyways. So as you can see here, 144 hertz, thin bezels. They've trimmed it down on the sides compared to the previous MSI Raiders that came out in the previous years. And you have full numpad. It's not condensed like you have on the Gigabyte Aero where they kind of like try to cram everything onto the deck of the keyboard. The buttons are a little cheap. They are quite plasticky. I just turned off the computer by accident, but you have a fan button to crank it up. You also have a button to activate and deactivate the RGB on the keyboard itself. The next thing, ports. Port situation. On the left-hand side, we have a RJ45 jack, HDMI, mini DisplayPort, HDMI, oops, not HDMI, USB Type-C. This is not Thunderbolt 3. 2 audio jacks for your headphone and microphone. And then on the other side, you have your SD card slot and 2 USB 2.0 ports. On the back, you have your barrel connector so that this thing can give power. No ports on the back of the device. This is strictly just the Raider logo. Then you have a bunch of vents or radiators to help dissipate heat from this laptop. So that's pretty much it. Expect a review sometime in the near future. I'm going to be putting this through its paces, see how it compares to some of the other laptops that are currently on the market. Anyways, what is going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining me on another live stream. I'm glad to be here with you guys right now. I apologize for the earlier one. We didn't have audio. My fault. For some reason, when I rebooted the computer, it completely crashed. So one guy asked, what processor is this? This is the i7-9750H. So you can get this all the way up to an i9-9980HK if you really want to, or you can start off with an i5-9300H, and you can spec this with up to 64 gigabytes of RAM. Inside of here you have dual channel memory, so it's a little bit quicker than sticking like a single DIMM inside of here and then hoping for the best. A lot of manufacturers are catching on to put dual channel memory inside of their laptops because us creators and you guys are very vocal about it in the comment section. Your complaints and our voice matters. All these things we take when we review these devices is all feedback, and when we can make changes like that, a lot of us become happy, we get better products, and of course, your feedback is the most important. So Paul asks, what is the price of this laptop? I do not know. I did not look it up before the live stream. It's been a hectic day, but if someone wants to check and let us know in the comments, that would be fantastic. And if no one does, I'll place it in the description down below after this live stream is over. All right, so that wraps it up for this unboxing. Let's talk about the news. There's a lot going on right now. Okay, we're gonna start off with the simple one. Right now, at this very moment, just came in today, the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 is looking like it's gonna have a couple of missing features. From what I'm hearing, the headphone jack is being completely removed, and the physical buttons are no longer going to be there. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. Like, I knew eventually Samsung was going to get rid of the headphone jack. It was something that was coming up for a very long time. But I always thought they would do it on the regular Galaxy S lineup first, because that lineup is a little bit more consumer friendly. I find the Note lineup to be a bit more geared towards power users. And I'd figure with power users, you want to keep as many features as possible. And even though the headphone jack is definitely a dying breed, a lot of power users still appreciate it. You combine that with the S Pen, the big screen, the whole multimedia experience. Kind of breaks my heart they're getting rid of it right now. I would have loved at least another year, at least on the Galaxy Note line, maybe remove it on the S line first, and then eventually we'd have it on the Note line. I know a lot of people want the headphone jack. Tony Fath wants the headphone jack. I think it's important, but yeah, it's going away from every smartphone. And you know what? That is a unfortunate thing. Now, the next thing is the actual buttons. Ew, this is dirty on my screen. The next thing is the actual physical buttons. They're removing the volume rocker. They're getting rid of the Bixby key completely. It's no longer going to be there. And what they're doing instead is they're just going to have a volume rocker, power button, but it's not going to be a physical button. It's going to be more of a capacitive button or a touch focused button, very similar to the Galaxy S10e. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I like my physical buttons. I think it adds a nice touch to the design of this smartphone. It makes it feel more premium. I don't know how I'm going to feel about going to a capacitive button on the side of the phone. It's just not going to feel the same. Now, just like with everything else we complain about in life, eventually we'll get used to it, but obviously consumers are going to voice their opinion as soon as this change happens, if it happens, because again, this is a rumor. We don't know for sure. There's still a couple of months left. Things could change, but yeah, they're saying no more physical buttons, no more headphone jack, and that's quite sad. So we'll see about that. A lot of people feel that the Galaxy S10 is the perfect device right now because it has those features. And if they remove it from the Note 10, we might see an uptake in sales for the regular Galaxy S10 and, of course, the Galaxy S10e. Okay, next big thing on the list. The next big thing is Huawei. They are fighting back. This is a big deal because, we knew this would happen. We just didn't know exactly what they were going to do. Was China going to pull up its fists and just start banning American products left or right? Or would they take a more subtle approach, start off with something small, then build its way up in order to foster a conversation between both of these very powerful nations? Now, here's the thing. We knew Huawei was going to fight back, and we had some indication they were going to take this to court, and that's the first step they've done. It says right here, Huawei goes to court to fight the illegal ban as China decides on a softer approach. So the legal representative for China has filed a lawsuit against the United States for this unlawful ban on Huawei. They're saying it's basically illegal. They're basically zoning in on Huawei alone. They're not including anybody else. And they've provided no evidence on why they're no longer allowed to operate in the United States. Now, this is important for China to do this because if they don't take these normal legal steps and just go straight to banning, it kind of gives them the same, it kind of puts them in the same position as the United States. It makes them look really harsh. By registering a lawsuit, it looks like they're following the law, and that's important for them from basically a PR aspect. But to be honest, this is not going to do much because when you uphold this in the court of law, especially in the United States with a trade war going on, this could take months. This could take years to be resolved. And quite frankly, Huawei doesn't have years for this issue to be resolved. So they'll start the process here, and then they're going to escalate it by incorporating some of their own trade bans. One of the trade bans they are actually talking about right now is banning rare earth materials. This is a big deal because rare earth materials are what used in our smartphones. There's 17 elements. There's a bunch of different type of rare earth materials that we use on a regular basis. China is the biggest provider of these materials, things that create magnets, components, structures of our smartphone. Without these materials, we wouldn't be able to use the consumer electronics we're currently using right now. So there's a couple of things they might do. They might completely ban exports on these rare materials, which I highly doubt they'll do because China absolutely depends on the United States to sell these products so that they can manufacture them. Or they might restrict the amount of rare materials that are leaving the country. So this would increase the prices of these materials, which means the products that we're purchasing right now will skyrocket in price. And then the third option is tariffs. They'll just apply tariffs to these rare materials. You'll still have access to the exact same amount. But again, it'll increase the cost of all of our devices that are here right now. Now, I know this situation is very messy between China and the United States. And look, as much as we don't like this, and as much as Huawei is being singled out, unfortunately, this needs to be done. Like, I love Huawei products. Like, I think the P30 Pro is probably one of the best smartphones you can buy right now. But let's face it, you know, North America in general has always had the poor end of the trade deal with China. I mean, think about how many companies are allowed in China that are American. Facebook was banned, Google was banned, Twitter was banned. If you want to operate in China, you are very limited to the capacity of what you can do. There are so many rules and regulations to operate there that it is very unfair to basically American companies. So unfortunately, it's Trump who's leading this ban. I would have loved to have a different president do this because Trump personally is probably one of the worst business people on this entire planet. He has no idea what he's doing. But I do agree with him that we need to incorporate this sort of tough aspect to the trade ban because if we don't, nothing's ever going to be fair. So that's that. But then there's the whole aspect of sympathizers saying, listen, you know, the whole privacy issue. The privacy issue is moot because, yes, I absolutely think there has been nothing that has been proven. Huawei hasn't spied on the United States or anything like that. But we have to think about at the same time, if we do allow them to have this power, how it could affect the country overall. I mean, giving them that access, especially when you're under a regime that can require you to hand over this network at any given point. This is a very fickle and tricky situation, and it's very delicate. It's going to be affecting all of us as consumers in terms of price points for the next, who God knows how long. It could be 3 months, could be a few weeks, could be 6 months, but this trade deal is definitely going to go forward. Or trade ban, sorry, is definitely going to go forward, and expect prices on consumer electronics to get more expensive before we see any reprieve whatsoever. Obama is not going to come back. Punch sounds with your mouth, please. Not happening. Greetings from Switzerland. Thank you guys so much for joining this. It's been a very crazy week with information. Huawei is under a very serious situation. They're trying to fight hard right now. They also have a bunch of Canadians who are imprisoned over there who they feel they don't plan on releasing at the moment. They're basically using them as a bargaining chip for future trade delegations with Canada. They're basically watching Canada right now. They're watching every position we make because right now we have the CEO's daughter in our custody. If we side with the Americans, goodbye to those two captured Canadians. Anyways, I am totally getting into the political aspect of this. I didn't mean to. I want to keep this strictly to tech, but unfortunately, our tech products are being wrapped up in a very serious political situation, and it's great that, or it's important that we talk about it because one of the things that I see a lot in the comments is that a lot of people feel sorry for the companies. And you know what? I do, because, you know, we enjoy their products. But you have to like take a step back, look at the entire picture, see what's fair, what's not fair. And don't get me wrong, both sides are acting very dirty right now. No one's innocent in this entire trade war. But the bottom line is we haven't had a fair trade agreement with China in a very long time. So some sort of war has to happen before it's going to get better. So that pretty much wraps it up about Huawei fighting back. They might ban rare earth metals. They're going to court. We're going to see increased prices. It's going to get a lot nastier. Eventually, both parties are going to sit down and basically discuss this deal and come to a resolution. But the question that remains is when? The big question, when is that going to happen? All right, next thing on the list, WWDC is around the corner. It's coming up next week, June 3rd. A lot of big announcements. iOS 13 is going to be announced. Hopefully some hardware upgrades. I'm thinking maybe a brand new MacBook Pro that's long overdue. That trash can has been out on the market for quite some time. I want something that's a little bit more modular, something that can be upgraded, that's meant for professionals, because the previous MacBook Pro, the trash can, which I never bought for myself because I'm more of a PC user, was not upgradable. It had poor thermals, it would overheat, and creative professionals or someone who needs demanding systems needs something that runs cooler, something that's upgradable, something that's a little bit more streamlined. My doorbell is ringing. I want to go answer it, but I'm not going to go answer it. All right, the next thing. Dark mode, finally coming to iOS 13. I know this is a simple feature. It's been out on Android for a while, but you know what? iPhones are gravitating towards OLED displays. And with OLED displays, you want dark mode in order to help battery life. So that's going to be important. The other big thing, and I think the big focus with iOS 13 is actually going to be the iPad specifically, because right now on the iPad, it's a great device. This device is fantastic, but it's very limited in the capacity of how you can access it. It doesn't have a specific file system to use. I mean, if you want to use the file system, you have to import the footage into your photos, and the app has to read it and then bring it in, and you're stuck with all these things in your Photos app which you never wanted in the first place. So I think they're going to bring a proper file manager to it, and that's going to be key, because it'll make life a lot easier when you're trying to work with specific applications. I know, video editing is becoming a thing on a tablet. I know Photoshop is becoming a thing on a tablet. In fact, speaking of Photoshop, I thought we were supposed to have an iPad full-featured Photoshop version for this. I haven't seen one yet. And that's probably one of the more exciting applications that I'm looking forward to on the iPad. And I want to have a way to access the file manager properly. So we're gonna have to wait for that. Who is French here? So new file manager, dark mode is coming. Mac is gonna get a thing called Marzipan, which is the ability to use iOS apps on Mac OS. I think that's important because a lot of these apps we use on our iPad or iPhone would be so nice to use kind of like in a terminal or in a window on your Mac. The big thing though is how they're going to incorporate it on the Mac. Is it going to be like very sloppy like a Chromebook where you have like these really poor featured Android apps pop up that just don't run very efficient? Or are they going to be in a nice display where we actually feel great using them? I think that's going to be the key differentiator there. How are third parties going to develop these apps to work on both platforms at the end of the day? So Iron Mexican says, time to catch up Apple. I need more features on my iPad. Vexel Ghost says, Affinity Photo Matte on iPad. I've heard of Affinity Photo. It's a great substitute for Photoshop. I haven't tried it personally. I heard there's a bit more of a learning curve, especially if you're making the switch over to it. But something I have to try. And quite frankly, I'm just so used to Photoshop that for me to abandon it at this point would require me to learn something new, which I have no problem doing. Like just recently, I decided to use a MacBook. I've been switching to it for a little while to do a couple of tests on it to see how I feel about Mac OS. And with that, I started to learn Final Cut Pro. And it's been kind of a nice experience. It's amazing how well Final Cut Pro runs on a piece of hardware that is throttling because of thermals. So I was kind of excited about that. All right, so my anime story brings up a good point. Apple's going to use a CPU in Mac next year. Okay, so I think what he means by that is Apple's going to switch to their CPUs in their MacBooks at some point. I don't think it's going to be next year. I think it's a little bit too early. But yes, the goal for Apple is to eventually use their own ARM processors in their MacBooks. And if they can do that, we'll never have any of those thermal situations happening again, because Apple wants you to have a product that's thin, that's light, that has low fan noise, that has good battery life. And it's really hard to do that right now with Intel processors. Intel processors require a lot of cooling. They're still on a 14 nanometer technology. I mean, AMD's moved to 7. They've gone down to 10 with the new U series for Intel, but it's still way behind ARM. ARM is all the way down to 7 already, and it's easier to cool a CPU with lower nanometers than it is with one with a higher one. So the sooner Apple can make the pivot to their own ARM architecture, the faster and the better cooled their laptops will become. But I still think we're a couple of years out from that happening. All right, so other things that are being announced at WWDC. I don't think we're going to get a complete redesign for iOS. I think it's going to look very familiar to the way it looks like you see right here. But we're going to get a lot of under-the-hood changes. I think we're going to get a revamp to a lot of the Mac or Apple-specific apps. So Mail is going to be revamped. It's going to be a much better program than it was before. Maybe the Stocks app. Maybe Safari's going to get some updates. Basically, making these apps that usually aren't that great a lot better, or at least in line with the current competition. Because let's face it, Apple is not the best when it comes to app development. Their app development is pretty poor in comparison to other third-party manufacturers. So I think with time, they're going to get better because they're trying to push away from just relying on hardware to subscriptions. And with subscriptions lies software. So their software has to be better in order for them to have higher subscription rates and basically stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for today's live stream. I unboxed the MSI GS75. This will be reviewed sometime in the near future. We talked about Huawei. They have a long way to go. This is just the beginning. They're fighting back. The Galaxy Note 10, removing the headphone jack, and of course, they're removing physical buttons. And iOS 13, the big center point of WWDC. Like I said, we're not going to see a lot of hardware being announced there. We'll see some stuff on Apple's Arcade. It's probably not coming out until fall, but we'll get some mention of it. We'll see a new version of Apple Watch OS. We're going to see some stuff for the Apple TV. Funny enough, fun fact, I've actually never used Apple TV in my entire life. Never in my entire life. So that's pretty much it. So we're going to do a lightning round right now. I'm going to open up questions. And yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear the questions. Anything about Asus? So I don't know if you guys have been following Computex. A lot of great laptops have been coming out of that show. All these manufacturers, Intel, Asus, Qualcomm, have their vision of the future of computing. Intel is doing some crazy designs with like a keyboard in the front, a monitor on top, another small monitor over here. Asus is releasing laptops with dual screens. So a screen on the top of the deck of the keyboard, and then you have the regular screen on top. Qualcomm is envisioning laptops with insane battery life running their architecture, so the ARM architecture. And yeah, we're getting a lot of refreshes. A refreshed Alienware from Dell, refreshes from MSI. We saw the MSI GT76. Is it 76? The competitor to the Dell Alienware 51M. Apparently it runs faster. It's a lot more powerful. Hopefully I get to test that out. But yeah, a lot of laptops coming out of Computex here. Which ones are you like most excited about? So sub to PewDiePie. No, do you edit your own videos? I edit the majority of my videos. If not me, then sometimes Ash comes in and he'll edit videos as well. Hey Matt, buying a new phone this weekend to be ready for my Unigrad P30 Pro or S10 Plus on Bell. So usually I would say it's a pretty good tie between both of those devices, but what's going on right now with Huawei, I'd take a step back from their products because I don't know exactly what's going to happen. If they're banned over those 90 days, then your P30 Pro is going to have a tough time getting updates. So to play it safe, I would say definitely go with the S10 Plus. Should I still buy the MateBook X Pro with all that is happening with Huawei? So that's a great question. Microsoft did pull all the Huawei products from its store, but But we don't know what's happening with Windows licensing. Nothing has been said whatsoever. So again, just like with the smartphone, I'm going to go on the side of caution and say maybe buy a different laptop because I don't know exactly how this whole Huawei situation is going to play out. And the last thing I want is for you to spend all that money on a brand new laptop to be left in the dust with no updates. Please do a review on the Omen RTX 2060. I plan to. I just got to get one in the studio. What about the Redmi K20 Pro? Something I need to get my hands on as well. Are you going to WWDC and should you start working for The Verge and run for president? No, I'm not going to WWDC this year. I was about to, but didn't happen. I don't want to work for The Verge. And if I was the president, I would probably make your country a better place, but somehow economically worse. It would just be I'd probably make it more like Canada. Well, RTX cards going to help us more in the video editing than GTX cards. So honestly, right now, no, we're not seeing a huge improvement from RTX cards for video editing. And to be quite honest, Adobe Premiere is still a very, very, very CPU-focused NLE. NLE is another term for video editor. Maybe with other programs like DaVinci Resolve, which is a bit more GPU focused. So here's the thing, when you're editing video in Adobe Premiere, like your timeline stuff is usually done with the CPU, but then when you start adding effects and when you render, it goes to the GPU. So it's a weird situation, whereas in other programs like Final Cut, it's very GPU specific, and it also uses the CPU as well to help render the file faster. So I don't think there's a big difference right now in terms of speed between RTX and GTX for video editing. Did you get a chance to check out the Redmi Book 14? No, not yet, but I want to. If Huawei is having problems now, will OnePlus and other Chinese phone companies be having problems too? So that's a question I've gotten on my previous Huawei videos. And the short answer is I don't think it will go that far for other companies like OnePlus to have a problem. The trade war would have to get very, very deadly for that to happen. I think OnePlus is in an okay position, and I think right now the main targets are specific to Huawei and ZTE. Vote for Matthew. Are there any Chinese companies that are under the threat from this? So like Huawei, ZTE, I'm sure there's a place you can find the US entity list where you can like check out which companies are not available to be worked with. Matt, you please review Xperia 1. I'm trying to get my hands on it. When will review Asus Strix series? I already reviewed an Asus Strix not too long ago. Basically, like 3 weeks ago, I reviewed the GL504. I do have an Asus laptop review coming out this Sunday or Monday, so stay tuned for that. And what else? Come to the US, Matt, and get Trump out of office. I'll send you some Pythons. How would you rate the camera on the OnePlus 7 Pro on a scale from 1 to 10? A 10 being Google Pixel level and a 1 being on par with Amazon Fire Phone. Wow. I would rate it about a 6.5 to a 7. It's a good camera. It's definitely a step above the OnePlus 6T, but I still think it falls short before like the Galaxy S10 or Huawei P30 Pro or any of the other better flagship smartphone cameras. How do we send questions on Discord? You just go on Discord and type your question and at me on there, and if I see it, I'll answer it. If it's something specific to laptops or phones, one of my moderators or expert tech helpers will be able to help you out. My advice, learn to use ROMs on your Android phones. Cheap Chinese phones are good for those. So that's not necessarily true. A lot of Chinese phones have their bootloaders locked, and therefore you can't install ROMs. And also, ROMs are for like a very small portion of enthusiasts. A lot of people don't have the time or patience to install a ROM, and it's something most consumers shouldn't have to or want to do. Review Razer Blade Studio Edition. If I get my hands on it, definitely. Would you recommend I buy one of the Huawei laptops and install Linux, using it for programming as a web developer? Yeah, I mean, like, if you install Linux in there and all the driver support is there, I mean, most of the components are not from Huawei. It's going to be Intel, Skyhynix. I mean, all that stuff is from those companies. You should be okay. But if you can avoid it, I would avoid it for now until you find out exactly where this trade deal goes. When is Asus ZenBook Pro due coming to sales? Probably in the fall, that's my guess. I am Blur, aka Brendan. Thank you so much, buddy. Picked up 4K C930 for the reasons you liked it. Media, GarageBand, etc. Needing a port dock for Ethernet, memory, mouse, etc. Not monitor. Do I need a powered dock or none? Also, Samsung T5, best choice for portable SSD. So that's a great laptop. It's a good convertible. I'm glad you picked it up, and I'm glad, more importantly, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Also, it means I don't have to review the Samsung notebook anymore. if you want a port dock for Ethernet, check out CalDigit. They have a small one that has Ethernet, a bunch of USB ports. It's about this big, and it doesn't take up a lot of space, and it's not that expensive. So CalDigit, I think it's called the T3 dock. They have a bunch of docks on their website. It's a small one like this. And it's also portable, which is something you might want instead of just leaving it at home and only using it at home. If you want something bigger, they have bigger versions of it that just basically sit on the desk and you can connect your C932. As for Samsung T5 solid SSD, one of my favorites, if you are a little bit more serious and more into like being a creative professional, I would check out Angelbird. They have solid drives, but there is a premium to pay for if you buy one of their drives. They're also faster as well. I have ROM. Good for you. Okay, do you think Xperia is worth? How it affect? What's sufficient RAM for phones these days? 6, 8, or 12? So for iPhones, definitely not 6. You can get away with 4 gigabytes of RAM, and your phone's probably just as good in memory management as most Android phones. If you're doing Android, I think 6 gigabytes should be the absolute minimum at this time. Galaxy S10 Plus better than OnePlus 7 Pro. Some ways yes, some ways no, but I think overall as a complete package, yes. I find the Galaxy S10 to be a lot more comfortable to hold in the hand. It's just, I don't know. I find the OnePlus 7 Pro to be much too big to hold. And don't get me wrong, the S10 Plus is big already. The 7 Pro just feels very unwieldy. Like this is still big, but I can manage it. Whereas the 7 Pro, it's like, okay, this is getting a little out of hand. I don't need a 6.7-inch display. But if you're talking about displays, I do like that crazy refresh rate that you do get with the 7 Pro. So there are some advantages to it. Like if you like stock Android or a cleaner version of Android, the very fast, crazy screen, then I'd go for the 7 Pro. But this one still has a better camera, has better battery life, it has wireless charging. The screen is just as good, minus the faster refresh rate. Has a headphone jack. So it does have, I think overall, the S10 Plus still provides the better package. And it also has better speakers, to be quite honest. Okay, next question. Best gaming laptop, which is cheap? Ooh, that's a good question. For 2019, I still have a bunch to review. I'm actually reviewing a cheap gaming laptop coming out in the next couple of days, so stay tuned for that. I love your videos. Well, I love you, Jordan. Thank you. Who else is this? What is your final review on the Samsung A80? I've never reviewed it, so I don't have a final review. Do you think the Pixel 4 will be dope? Honestly, I say this every year. This is the year of the Pixel. I think Google's going to finally get their crap together, and I think the Pixel 4 is going to be beautiful. I think they're going to do a perfect job because they've had a few years to basically refine their manufacturing process. I think the Pixel 4 is going to be truly the first phone that is designed by them and created by them, even though they've acquired their HTC engineers. But I have a feeling the Pixel 4 will be the Pixel phone we've always been waiting for, at least in flagship quality. 2 lenses, Google's computational photography. I'm crossing fingers that it's going to be a hit. Acer Nitro 5, maybe. Oh my God, everywhere I look, the OnePlus 7 Pro is everywhere. Do you think it'll last? I think so. I think it'll last. I think it's a good phone. It's their first attempt at a flagship phone. I think overall they did a good job, but I don't think it's better than any of the top high-end flagship phones that we have on the market right now. I still think they offer the whole package. So next question, how it will affect Mate X folding phone, bro? Your opinion. Broken heart, wham, wham, wham. Okay, so now with Huawei being out of the picture, Samsung has automatically become the #1 leader in foldable phones right now. They can take their time, fix the previous issues on the current Galaxy Fold, come out into the market, and automatically take the reign as the #1 folding phone on the market. But if these issues get resolved, who knows? Huawei might come out and change things up again. All right. Anything else? Something wrong with your microphone? Voice is too low? Okay. Is my voice too low for you guys? Because that's the first person to complain. I want to make sure the mic is good for the next live stream. What are your views on the Asus Scar 3? Well, I don't know. When I get in the studio, I'll give you all my views in a full review, and you're going to like it. Does the person knock you? Do you like Samsung or phone? Which one is... Do you like Samsung or phone? That's a very general question. How does that... Do I like a rotary phone? Like a cordless phone? All right. Anyways, that wraps up Ooh, you bought the GX701. That's one of the reviews I have coming up. So you might want to stay tuned for that one. Anyways, that wraps up this live stream. Thank you guys so much for joining. Let me know how you guys feel about this one. I changed things up a bit. I started with an unboxing, talked about some news, and took your questions. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, because if you did, hit the like button, share it with your friends, tell your mother about it, show them who you love. And that's basically it. Now I'm going to end this video because Brendan wants me to do a karate chop, and it's been a while since I've done one, and I have to use my voice as a sound effect because I can't edit this in post.